At least John Wick 2 isn't a horrible film. You can do one great entry, and there's no guarantee that your second entry is ever going to be as good or nearly as good. And unfortunately for John Wick, that's one of the problems it tends to face. It isn't necessarily a bad film, but it isn't nearly as good as the first film. And unfortunately, it falls short in that aspect. The story's less compelling. The motivation for the character isn't nearly as exciting. Overall, it just doesn't hold as well as it can. I mean, to be really clear, Terminator 1 was incredible and, was a big flash in the 80s that just exploded and left an impact. Terminator 2 came and demolished the 90s, setting the bar for any sequel to ever come out. And let's just pretend that that's all they made, because that's all they made, right? Or Indiana Jones 1 and 2, And then you end up getting Crystal Skull. It just doesn't always work. Or even Batman. You get Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and arguably The Dark Knight Rises. All great, depending on who you're talking to. Unfortunately for John Wick, it isn't one of those films. It isn't one of those films that breaks the mold in sequels. However, it's not a bad sequel. But that being said, let's start talking about what makes it good. The good. The acting. Keanu Reeves once again delivers the exciting, multifaceted performance of the struggling, emotionally wrecked John Wick. In addition, we have Ian McShane, who does a great job. As always, he was also in the first one as well, if I remember correctly. And we have Common playing what he typically plays. It's the tough, mean guy, action hero, bad guy character. And he does a great job. You may have seen him in a few movies here or there. He was in Run All Night. He's also a rapper, known for that specifically. He was in Terminator Salvation. He's been in a few movies here and there. He's always the tough, mean guy. And we also have a great and wonderful cameo from the chameleon actor, okay, not so much of a chameleon, but a great actor who plays great characters, Peter Stormare. You might know him from Prison Break. He plays John Abruzzi. He's in Armageddon when he's like, in Russia, this is how we fix satellites. I might be doing that quote completely wrong. You'll forgive me one day, I'm sure. And he also recently did a great job as doing a motion capture performance in the video game Until Dawn. If you're into video games, highly recommend it. So, what I really liked about this film is there's one scene in particular. There's this subway knife fight, okay? It's between Common and Keanu Reeves. Basically what ends up happening, without spoiling it too much, is they are inside, not the subway itself, but inside the subway car. And they end up having this close knife fight in close proximity. It is one of the most amazing and exciting fights. If you ever seen, I think it's called Drive with Dwayne The Rock Johnson, or The Rock, there's a scene in that film where he ends up having a fight with a guy he's trying to kill that was ultimately responsible for killing his brother, and he ends up having it in a bathroom. So if you've seen that knife fight and you thought that was incredible, this completely blows it out of the water. Less space, very narrow, very tight quarters, very intense, absolutely beautifully done. Honestly, one of the highlights of the movie. And then there's another great scene where throughout the movie, and if you're familiar with the first one, I'm assuming you are, there's a place called the Continental. It's a hotel where essentially all these assassins, part of this underworld, meet. And the rule is that when you're on this ground, you cannot fight each other. You cannot kill each other. You cannot assassinate a contract on this person. Otherwise, you'll risk death. That's the rules. That's the codes. If it's on the grounds or in the building. So there's a scene where Keanu Reeves is fighting Common. And as they're fighting, they're rolling down these stairs. And it's just this great battle. They're punching one another, hitting each other. And they end up falling through a window. Unfortunately, that window ends up being the Continental. As they're fighting, you hear a voice go, "Gentlemen, please stop taking your business here. We do not conduct downs on the continent. We do not conduct contracts and business on the Continental." So they're forced to dust themselves off, get up, completely change their demeanors, and ultimately it ends in them having a drink. Yes, that's heavily spoiler. I know that's lots of spoilers, but that was one of the best scenes in the movie. I absolutely loved it, in addition to the knife fight. And another great thing about this movie is you get more about the underworld. They show you more. In the first movie, they show you a good amount of the underworld, but you get a lot more. The bad. Also, this film, like I mentioned earlier, was that the story just wasn't as compelling. And that's still the case. The problem with this film, more specifically, without being too much into spoiler territory, is the simple fact that the first half of the film that sets up the second half is not interesting. It almost leaves you wondering, where's this going to go? What's going to happen? What's going to come from it? And it isn't until the second half of the film where the film actually starts picking up and being interesting. And that's one of the biggest problems with John Wick 2, where the first film, there was a clear motive, a clear motivation, a clear story. Yes, it was flashy, yes, it was fun, but it was exciting and thrilling. However, this feels like more of the same. And that's where it has a problem. It just doesn't feel fresh. And the story doesn't feel as strong of a story. I mean, all the things make sense. The motivations are still there. It's not as interesting the second time around. Another issue is the action sequences. Okay, so I loved the action sequences in John Wick 1. And the action sequences here are still great. However, they tend to drag on a little too much. There's one particular action sequence in the beginning which is very thrilling and exciting, and it really sets up what the movie's going to be. However, about halfway through that action sequence, I think it feels like 10 minutes or so. Probably about the 5-minute point is when you kind of start thinking, okay, that's cool, but now I'm getting bored. But oh, that was cool, but now I'm kind of bored. But hey, that's cool, but now I'm kind of bored. And that's what's been happening with John Wick. It's like they realized John Wick 1, everything was great action sequences. Let's increase the action sequences, make John Wick an untouchable boogeyman badass that he is. You know, Batman versus Superman, let's completely scrub that, Warner Brothers. Let's do Batman versus John Wick. I totally see it. I totally love it. It happens. It's believable. John Wick cannot be killed by a human being. It's pretty clear, even against all odds. And you'll see that in this. But the problem is the action sequences get a little boring. Like, I understand that he has to go kill one guy and he has to go through 50 people, but when you see it about like 6 or 7 times in the movie and they're overly long sequences, you're kind of thinking, okay, I'm getting a little bored here. And then, lastly, this is the part that blows me away. Are you ready, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, Lawrence Fishburne, Academy Award nominee, one of the greatest actors in the world. Honestly, amazing, talented man, known for Apocalypse Now, Boys in the Hood, What's Love Got to Do with It, and most recently, let's get a drum roll on this one, please. Yeah, he is known as Morpheus from the Matrix series, one of the greatest, well, arguably greatest sci-fi series made in the last 30 years. I mean, honestly, the first one was blown out of the water. He played that cloak and dagger, mysterious man with glasses perfectly, and one of the greatest actors. And what happens is really, you know, if you saw the trailer for John Wick 2, you know he's in it, and really what this is just a glorified cameo. He isn't in it for more than maybe, 5 minutes screen time. And maybe to some people that's excellent. Oh my gosh, Neo and Morpheus, Keanu Reeves, and Lawrence Fishburne back on the screen again, baby! Yeah, I mean, yeah, for a moment you have that moment of excitement, and you hope he's going to play a bigger role, but he really doesn't. And that's really the problem. It's Lawrence Fishburne. I mean, Lawrence Fishburne made Predators. Predators, if you're not familiar with that was the sequel that everyone that liked Predator from the 80s deserved, except it came about 20 years later. However, it was great. And Lawrence Fishburne played this hermit that would steal people's equipment, and he was excellent and perfect and creepy. And maybe that was a little bit of a cameo, but he felt like he had more meat. He had more meat to chew in that scene. He had a lot. He had multiple personalities, kind of crazy. I mean, I digress. Watch the movie, recommend it, but back on this. In this, he kind of just plays another hidden character that's part of this criminal assassin underworld. And he's kind of like the eyes and ears of everything type of character. However, it's just he doesn't have a lot to chew. And by chew, I mean he doesn't have a lot to work with as an actor. Was John Wick Chapter 2 good? Was it bad? My advice, just watch the last 15 minutes of the film because it sets up Part 3. Other than that, just skip it or watch it on cable or watch it when you're half asleep or just don't put too much effort into this film. It just wasn't as good as it could have been.